Do you ever feel like your students are falling asleep during math periods? Do students in your class have poor feelings and attitudes towards math? Do your students often forget math strategies shortly after the unit? Do you struggle to find relevant math videos to help explain concepts that are engaging and at their learning level? Do you struggle finding ways to engage your students and create memorable, meaningful math learning events? Well, green screen video production might just be the answer. Not only can green screen technology transform your classroom, it has the ability to take students to far off places. Like the moon, France, or a tropical island. Vanier Elementary is a K-6 school of 303 students located in the east end of St. John's. The school serves the neighborhood near the school and has one English and one French immersion stream. The school staff includes 29 teachers and 9 support staff. Vanier Elementary's motto is "Be the best that you can be," and we strive to achieve this every day with a strong commitment to learning and achievement. As a school, we try to be responsive and innovative when planning learning experiences for our students. Ashley Hudson is a grade 4 early French immersion teacher with 7 years teaching experience. Ashley has taught overseas in Abu Dhabi. Ashley has her Bachelor's of Primary Elementary Education French immersion and is currently in the last semester of her Master's in Educational Technology. As a teacher, Ashley is passionate about technology integration in the curriculum and often seeks for fun and innovative ways to get students involved in projects. Ashley believes in the principles of 21st century learning and often looks for ways to develop these skills. Much of her teaching centers around collaborative and creative tasks. Using video production as a current form of text for students has been a passion for Ashley, and her involvement with the Teachers in Action project has allowed her to explore the medium further. Ashley's interest in joining the TIA project was sparked by the idea of exploring student inquiry, the ability to purchase green screen equipment, and planning time to explore new ways of teaching math. When examining school data from provincial assessments, Vanier staff were noticing that math achievement, particularly in communicating math reasoning, was under provincial averages. Being responsive, we have tried to develop ways to improve math education, such as math clubs. As a staff, we discussed that students did not seem to be retaining strategies from year to year. It was almost as if they learned it and then dumped it. Another major barrier noticed was the French as the language of instruction for math. As French immersion teachers, we expressed that there are not as many French immersion appropriate videos or tutorials out there. Many are in English, or the French is too difficult for second language learners to grasp. Many students have difficulty expressing their thoughts and ideas in French. We also noted that students also had negative feelings about math and often viewed themselves as not good at math. Explaining steps and strategies was a particular source of frustration for students. Much of the discussion centered around how we could improve the outcome. A wonder was then created. I wonder if we used different teaching strategies, would students be able to better communicate mathematical reasoning and retain strategies? So do you guys like math?
Yeah.
Okay, Grace, why don't you like math?
Because if you know an answer, they tell you it in a different way that makes you want to explain it, but you don't know how.
Megan, do you like explaining your math?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I really like reading.
It was good. It was just kind of hard to do math in French.
The class from this study was 24 grade 4 middle income students with ages of 9 and 10. The class consisted of 15 males and 9 females. One female student transferred to another school during the school year, thus withdrawing from the study. The native English-speaking students completed curriculum including language arts, math, science, social studies, religion, health, and art, all in French. Resources consulted including the Reflective Educator's Guide to Classroom Research and other published literature in the area of video production as a teaching tool. The Reflective Educator's Guide helped outline the steps of the teacher inquiry process and clarified any questions about the method. Past research had generally favorable results about using video production and having students act as student teachers to scaffold learning for each other. By examining this literature, we were able to come up with a plan for implementation and data collection that best suited the project. The general focus area of the project was discussed with parents on curriculum night and followed up with an email to the parent list. Copies of the outcomes and objectives of the research was distributed to parents, along with a letter from RUN discussing the aspects of the Teachers in Action program. The parents of all 24 students in the class consented to the research and gave photo and video permission. Communication of the project was ongoing via email and also on Twitter. Our 7 meetings throughout the year consisted of face-to-face meetings with Dana, our facilitator from the Teachers in Action program. Dana, a retired teacher, has always had a passion for math, and it was evident in our meetings. She was very supportive of the project. In the initial planning phases, the idea of having students enhance their communicating and reasoning skills in math was identified. Potential barriers such as technology access, planning time, student technology skills, and the French language for math instruction were discussed. With Dana's guidance, we then narrowed our research questions. We developed both teacher and student questions. Throughout the school year, planning days consisted of planning the project, updating on progress, discussing evaluation methods, developing data collection techniques, and planning for implementation. After implementation, we met to analyze the data and reflect on the teacher inquiry process. Before implementation, students were given a Google form to rate their feelings and attitudes about math. Also, before implementation, students were asked to complete a math problem for addition and subtraction to explain their mathematical reasoning. This was used to give a baseline on how well students could communicate mathematical thoughts using previous teaching methods. Throughout the year, video production and Google Apps for Education were used to help build student technical skills. Using other cross-curricular projects, students were able to get comfortable with the video production process and working collaboratively on these types of projects. The aim was to have students build their technology and editing skills, that this was not a potential barrier during the implementation of the project. Students completed collaborative Google Docs, iMovies, stop-motion videos, green screen videos for different subject areas including French language arts, health, and social studies. The green screen app by Doink was selected because it was easy to use, accessible, and similar to the iMovie software. The Doink animation app was also bought, although not utilized by the groups in this project. Students were also introduced to the Educreations app. This app allows students to create whiteboard videos with voiceover. These were used during our unit on single-digit multiplication. As a class, we watched many of the videos and discussed as a whole group the quality of the videos. Based on our discussion, we developed a clear and concise language around mathematical explanations that included explaining necessary steps during problem solving. By the time our unit on multi-digit multiplication came around, students were well versed in the process.
Bob. Bébé Bob sait comment multiplier 6 fois 7. L'application de la stratégie, c'est l'adoublement. Comment faire l'adoublement? En premier, tu utilises la moitié du nombre. En cette cas, c'est 3 fois 7. 3 fois 7 égale 21. 21 fois 2 égale ton réponse. La réponse, c'est 42.
Before implementation, during our planning sessions, we developed a production checklist we wanted students to follow. While the project was very student-driven, we felt that a clear list of steps would help bring awareness to the structure of the video production process. We had talked about using a rubric or even a student-generated rubric, but felt like a checklist would be more appropriate for the age of the learner and the nature of the project. Students could reflect on their progress at each phase of the production process to ensure they were being clear in their explanations. By using a fairly open-ended checklist, we felt that we were not being too restricted of student inquiry, but at the same time giving enough structure and instruction of the task. The phases included research, storyboard, script writing, and production. As this was a collaborative task, we also developed a collaboration rubric for students to use as peer assessment. We did not include this in our data analysis, but felt it was important to generate common language and expectations for group work. Students would be responsible for rating their partner on their ability to work toward common goals. This gave students more accountability and drive to work well with their partner. Students were put in 10 groups of 2 and 1 group of 3 to ensure that they were maximizing their time during the task. Small groups were best, as this meant more time being invested in their own learning. Pairing students based on technology skills, math skills, and ability to work together were factors in the pairings. Assignment of different multi-digit multiplication strategies were chosen based on student needs. Students that often struggle with math were given much more visual representations, while students who were strong in math were assigned more complex or abstract strategies. Students began researching their assigned method using Khan Academy, YouTube, and Google. When students were able to see models and representations on how to do the strategy, they were more able to view themselves as capable. Knowing that their videos would also be published and viewed by others gave them more of a drive to succeed. The act of publishing is powerful and has been noted in many studies to be a huge motivating factor to produce quality work. After the researching phase, students began storyboarding their ideas using a comic strip. Students were asked to storyboard 10 to 15 pictures to give an idea of how their video would look. This incorporated language art outcomes for process writing, as students had to articulate step-by-step instructions. Students struggled with not providing enough pictures in their storyboard. Often they would show the beginning steps and the final answer, but lacked many of the small steps in between for the strategy. Modeling by asking students to explain the strategy to a teacher and taking imaginary pictures at each step, students were more concretely able to link the language to the pictures they needed to accompany their explanations at each stage. With guidance on this process, students edited and reformed their storyboards before final producer approval. Students worked independently during the script writing and video production phases. The teacher acted solely as a facilitator to answer tech questions and help with French language terms. The learning was now very much student-centered, often having them solve problems for each other or use their skills to research and find solutions. Having students work collaboratively using Google Docs allowed for monitoring of their progress during the script writing and make comments as suggestions. Students were given complete creative control on how they wanted to present their strategy, as long as they felt they best adhered to the outcomes on the video production checklist. Student videos were shared with the class and then with another grade 4 class at Beachy Cove Elementary by Google Classroom. As the videos did identify the students by picture and by name, keeping the online sharing limited to more secure channels was decided to be the most appropriate. Students were able to give feedback to each other via the Google Classroom forum for formative feedback. If students felt that they needed to change aspects of the video, they went back to production and made the necessary edits. Data collection involved using both quantitative and qualitative methods. Student attitudes and work samples were examined using changes in average mean score. Teacher observation and field notes were also used to help inform about the classroom changes occurring. Using a rubric developed in our planning sessions, students' written work samples were coded using a rubric scale from 1 to 4 before implementation and after implementation. Before implementation, we saw an average score of 2.39 out of 4 when usual techniques of teaching math were used. When students began using Educreation's interactive whiteboard app to record small videos, the mean score increased to 2.6 out of 4, showing already an increase in student achievement when video production was used. Post-video production written work samples were collected and also scored using this rubric. The mean score for these written work samples was 3 out of 4. When examining the pre-implementation written scores against the post-implementation written scores, we saw an increase of 0.48 for the overall mean score. In the Math Attitude Survey, mean responses for each question were calculated using Google Sheets. For the statement, "Math is boring to me," a decrease of 0.26 was noted. For the statement, "I like learning math," an increase of 0.52 for the mean response was noted. For the statement, "I'm good at mathematical problem solving and figuring out the answer," an increase of 0.18 was noted. "I'm good at explaining how I got my answer," increased by 0.23. I can teach others how I got my answer increased by 0.11. Overall, the statistical analysis of the Math Attitude Survey and student written work samples showed improvement in student achievement and student attitudes towards math. When looking at field notes, observations, and reflections as a qualitative data analysis, increases in student motivation and enthusiasm for math were evident. When testing students on the multi-digit unit and subsequent multi-digit division chapters, overall the level of communication had significantly increased. This was due to a large part that a culture surrounding the communication of mathematical reasoning had increased. Students became aware of the importance and viewed themselves as more capable when it came to math. The videos allowed them to be empowered and independent. The more student-centered environment took them from a more passive role to a much more active one in their learning. Teacher satisfaction also increased as new methods of teaching math turned out to be rewarding and enjoyable. The venture turned out to be worthwhile in exploring video production as a new teaching method. The use of green screen video and more student-centered learning has changed my views on instruction, assessment, and student learning in many ways. Acting in more of a teacher-facilitator role was difficult for me to accept at first. Relinquishing control of the content and turning the task over to the students was at first daunting, but ultimately very rewarding. I saw students who became confident and empowered to direct their own learning, and I was consistently impressed at their level of expertise and drive to succeed. Even students who generally are not motivated in math found this learning activity fun, engaging, and rewarding. My views about assessment also changed throughout the course of the project. I began to focus more on checklists as a primary way to communicate objectives to students. I began to reflect on the rubric process and deemed this more of a teacher assessment tool rather than a student one. Rubrics can sometimes be abstract and difficult for students of this age to interpret. By having clearly defined goals in checklist form, students were able to reflect on what they learned and communicate it more effectively. I hope to incorporate more checklists in my classroom practice. Throughout the course of this project, I learned a lot about the teacher inquiry process. As teachers, we are always reflecting on teaching, and my involvement with the TIA project really helped formalize this for me. By exploring wonderings and looking for well-planned ways to test these wonderings, I was able to make better decisions and change student learning. The support I received from my facilitator, Dana, made me reflect on how I was already using much of the teacher inquiry process already. By participating in this project, I was able to examine my teaching methods and explore new ways of approaching my subject matter. I feel more empowered to create more student-centered learning environments. I will continue using video production in math and hope to explore this medium in other subject areas, such as science. I am very thankful to the Teachers in Action Project for giving me the time to explore my wonderings and support me in that exploration.